The first sound was nothing more than a subtle vibration, a microsecond pulse that most would have missed entirely. But Catherine Martins didn't miss it. Her fingers, hovering over a network monitoring station at the United Nations Interstellar Communications Center, froze mid-keystroke. Something just pinged, she muttered, more to herself than to the room full of scientists and diplomats surrounding her. The center, a marvel of international cooperation built beneath the streets of New York, hummed with a constant electronic heartbeat. But this was different. This was alien. The monitoring screens flickered. Complex algorithms designed to detect even the faintest extraterrestrial communication began to light up like a Christmas tree. Catherine's background, a unique blend of quantum physics, advanced linguistics, and diplomatic strategy, had prepared her for this moment better than anyone could have anticipated. She remembered her grandmother's stories, a Cuban refugee who had survived political upheaval, who always spoke about the importance of understanding your opponent before they understood you. Those lessons now echoed through Catherine's mind as the first clear transmission began to resolve. The alien communication was elegant, almost mathematical in its precision. Most would have seen it as a simple survey transmission, a routine scan of an unremarkable planet in an unimportant solar system. But Catherine saw the subtle manipulations woven between the lines of data. These weren't just observers. They were architects of subtle control. "It's a probe," she announced to the room, her voice cutting through the mounting tension. But not the kind we've been expecting. The global communication network she had helped design began to light up. Servers in Beijing, Sao Paulo, Moscow, and Lagos simultaneously processed fragments of the transmission. What the aliens didn't realize was that humanity's greatest strength had always been its ability to collaborate when truly threatened. Dr. Marcus Williams, head of Global Technological Integration, leaned over Catherine's shoulder. His fingers danced across multiple holographic interfaces, tracing the transmission's origin and analyzing its complex encryption. "They're mapping our communication infrastructure," he muttered, "but they're doing it in a way that suggests manipulation." The transmission contained microscopic data packets designed to subtly influence communication protocols. Had it been received by a single government or communication network, the changes would have been nearly imperceptible. But humanity had learned, through decades of technological warfare and cyber conflicts, to be paranoid. Catherine's algorithm, developed during her time at the Joint Quantum Research Facility, began to deconstruct the alien transmission. What she discovered made her blood run cold. The communication wasn't just a survey. It was a carefully designed attempt to create fracture points in human communication networks, to subtly nudge different regions and governments toward conflict. "They want us divided," she realized out loud. "They've been watching us, and they believe our greatest weakness is our tendency to fight among ourselves." The irony wasn't lost on her. For centuries, human beings had indeed been their own worst enemies. Wars, economic conflicts, ideological divisions, these had defined much of human history. But now, faced with an external threat, something remarkable was happening. Government communication channels that would typically be hostile to one another began to synchronize. The transmission that was meant to divide was instead creating the most unified response in human history. Military strategists in Washington began sharing encrypted data with their counterparts in Tehran. Economic analysts in London collaborated with researchers in New Delhi. The communication network that the aliens had hoped to exploit was transforming into something entirely unexpected. Catherine understood the game being played. This wasn't just a first contact scenario. This was a test. The aliens were probing humanity's weaknesses, believing they had found a species ripe for manipulation. They had calculated human behavior based on centuries of observational data, confident in their superiority. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. As the first hour of the transmission passed, Catherine Martinez realized she was witnessing the birth of something unprecedented. Humanity wasn't just responding to a threat. They were rewriting the rules of engagement. The spark of defiance had been lit, and the galaxy would never be the same. Jason Williams' garage had never been just a garage. To the outside world, it looked like a typical California workspace, cluttered, chaotic, with half-dismantled electronics sprawling across workbenches. But to Jason, it was a crucible of innovation that would change the course of human history. The alien transmission had triggered something unprecedented in the global scientific community. Competitive boundaries dissolved overnight. Research grants that would have taken months now materialized within hours. Universities that had been rivals now shared data in real time, their firewalls becoming bridges instead of barriers. Jason's specialty was adaptive engineering, a discipline he pioneered by combining quantum mechanics, neural network design, and a mind that refused to accept technological limitations. The captured fragments of alien communication had become his obsession. While government labs approached the data with caution, Jason saw an opportunity. "They're using quantum entanglement," he muttered, surrounded by holographic displays that flickered with complex algorithms. "But their communication protocol is more like a rigid language than a dynamic system." His team was anything but traditional. Maria Rodriguez, a Brazilian neural network expert, worked alongside Wei Chen, a quantum cryptography specialist from Singapore. They had been brought together through an emergency global research initiative that prioritized speed and creativity over bureaucratic constraints. The breakthrough came during what Jason would later call the 3-day coffee binge. Surviving on espresso and pure determination, the team discovered that the alien communication network had a critical vulnerability. It was designed for stability, not adaptability. Each transmission followed a predictable pattern that assumed the receiver would be a passive participant. Humans were anything but passive. Maria's breakthrough came first. She developed a communication algorithm that could not just intercept the alien transmissions, but actively rewrite them in real time. "It's like linguistic judo," she explained, her fingers dancing across multiple interfaces. "We're using their own communication structure to transmit our own messages." Wei's contribution was equally revolutionary. He discovered that the alien quantum communication relied on a specific type of entanglement that could be subtly manipulated. What the aliens considered a secure, unbreakable communication method became a playground for human ingenuity. The first successful hack happened almost by accident. A test transmission intended to explore the communication network structure suddenly carried a payload of entirely human-generated content. Memes, cultural references, fragments of human art, music, and philosophy that would be completely incomprehensible to the alien intelligence. Government officials watched in a mixture of horror and fascination as Jason's team essentially turned the most advanced communication network in the galaxy into a bizarre, unpredictable messaging system. "We're not just breaking their network," Jason explained during an emergency briefing. "We're rewriting the entire concept of interstellar communication." The global research effort was unlike anything in human history. Scientists who had previously worked in isolation now collaborated across continents in real time. A researcher in Cape Town would develop a breakthrough that would be refined within hours by colleagues in Moscow, then implemented by a team in Tokyo. The alien communication network, designed to be a tool of observation and subtle manipulation, became something entirely different. Each transmission now carried the potential for surprise, for unexpected human creativity that defied all predictive models. Military strategists began to understand the true potential of what Jason's team had created. This wasn't just a communication hack. It was a complete reimagining of technological engagement. The aliens had approached humanity believing they were dealing with a predictable, divisible species. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. By the end of the first week, Jason's team had transformed the alien communication network into something that was part communication system, part artistic expression, and part pure chaos. Every transmission now carried the unpredictable DNA of human creativity. The technological rebellion had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. The global financial center in New York had always been a place of intense activity, but on this particular morning, Rebecca Thompson moved with a precision that made seasoned traders look like amateurs playing a childhood game. Her office was a marvel of technological integration. Holographic displays showed multiple global markets simultaneously, each screen a complex tapestry of algorithms, market trends, and real-time economic data. What her colleagues didn't know was that Rebecca was about to wage a war unlike any in human history, an economic conflict that would reshape the galactic understanding of human capability. The alien economic system had been studied for decades by human researchers. It was a meticulously designed network of interstellar trade routes, financial regulations, and market controls that had remained unchanged for thousands of years. The Galactic Concordance believed their economic structure was unassailable, a perfect machine of commerce and control. Rebecca knew better. Her background was unique, a combination of quantum economics, advanced algorithmic trading, and a deep understanding of complex systems. She had spent years studying the subtle vulnerabilities in apparently perfect economic networks. The alien transmission had given her the final piece of the puzzle. "They think predictability is strength," she muttered, her fingers dancing across multiple interfaces. But predictability is just another word for vulnerability. The first strike was subtle. A series of algorithmic trades that seemed random but were anything but. Rebecca had developed a trading algorithm that could move through different market systems like water, adapting, changing, creating ripples of uncertainty that would gradually become waves of economic disruption. Her team was a global network of economic warriors. A data analyst in Mumbai worked in perfect synchronization with a market strategist in Sao Paulo. A cryptoeconomics expert in Berlin communicated in real time with a risk assessment specialist in Shanghai. They were united by a single purpose: to demonstrate the true power of human economic innovation. The alien market systems relied on centuries of established trade routes and predictable economic behaviors. They had mathematical models that predicted market movements with what they considered absolute precision. These models worked perfectly until they encountered human unpredictability. Rebecca's first major move targeted a crucial interstellar trade hub. The algorithm she had developed didn't just trade, it learned. Each transaction was a data point, each market movement an opportunity to understand and exploit the system's inherent weaknesses. Within hours, the first cracks began to appear. Market stabilization systems that had worked flawlessly for millennia started to show signs of stress. What the aliens didn't understand was that humans viewed economic systems not as fixed structures, but as living, breathing entities that could be challenged, modified, and ultimately transformed. The global human economic network began to move in ways that defied all existing predictive models. Small markets became interconnected through innovative trading platforms. Cryptocurrency systems developed by independent teams began to create economic bridges that the alien systems couldn't comprehend. "We're not just disrupting their economy," Rebecca explained during a classified briefing. "We're demonstrating that economic strength comes from adaptability, not rigidity." By the end of the first week, multiple alien economic systems had begun to show signs of significant stress. Trading routes that had been stable for centuries suddenly became unpredictable. Financial regulations that had seemed ironclad now looked like fragile constructions. The most brilliant aspect of Rebecca's strategy was its psychological impact. It wasn't just about economic disruption. It was about challenging the fundamental belief that their economic system was unassailable. One of her colleagues, a veteran economic strategist, watched the market movements in awe. "They thought we were primitive," he said, watching the holographic displays dance with unprecedented market behaviors. "They never understood that our greatest strength is our ability to turn chaos into opportunity." As the first month of economic warfare concluded, the Galactic Concordance began to realize something terrifying. Humanity wasn't just participating in their economic system. They were rewriting the entire concept of interstellar commerce. The economic rebellion had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. The underground facility beneath the Smithsonian complex was unlike any research center in human history. Banks of quantum computers lined stark white walls, their cooling systems humming with barely contained energy. At the center of it all stood Michael Rodriguez, a man who understood that the most powerful weapon was never a gun, but an idea. His team was a carefully curated collection of humanity's most innovative minds: a linguistic anthropologist from Cape Town, a memetics expert from Tokyo, a cultural psychologist from Buenos Aires. Each brought a unique perspective to what was quickly becoming the most unconventional warfare strategy in galactic history. The aliens had spent centuries studying human communication, believing they had decoded the intricacies of human behavior. They had compiled massive databases of human interactions, cultural patterns, and social dynamics. What they didn't understand was that their very method of observation was fundamentally flawed. Humans aren't a problem to be solved, Michael explained during a classified briefing. We're a conversation to be understood, and conversations are never predictable. The psychological offensive began with something seemingly innocuous: internet memes. But these weren't just simple images with text. Each meme was a carefully constructed piece of cultural psychological warfare designed to exploit the fundamental differences between human and alien communication. Dr. Aisha Okonkwo, the team's linguistic expert, had discovered a critical vulnerability in the alien communication systems. Their language was based on pure information transfer, logical, linear, devoid of the nuanced emotional and contextual layers that defined human communication. The first wave of psychological warfare was subtle. Memes that seemed random to alien analysis teams carried deep cultural significance. A simple image of a cat wearing sunglasses could contain layers of meaning that would take alien researchers years to decode. Internet humor became a weapon more potent than any missile. The team developed communication algorithms that could generate content faster than any alien analysis system could process. Each transmission was a multi-layered puzzle, part communication, part art, part pure chaos. What looked like nonsense to an alien observer was a rich tapestry of human cultural expression. Michael's background in cognitive psychology gave him a unique perspective. He understood that human communication was never about pure information transfer. It was about connection, emotion, the ability to create shared meaning out of seemingly disparate elements. The alien observation networks began to break down. Their predictive models, built on centuries of careful study, started to fail spectacularly. Every time they thought they had understood a pattern of human behavior, the pattern would shift, mutate, become something entirely unexpected. "We're not just fighting," Michael told his team. "We're playing a game they don't even know exists." The psychological warfare expanded beyond digital communication. Cultural exports became strategic weapons. Music that defied traditional structure, art that challenged fundamental assumptions about perception, literature that existed in multiple interpretative states simultaneously. A jazz performance in New Orleans became a coded communication network. A street art installation in Berlin carried messages that would take alien researchers decades to begin to comprehend. Every human cultural expression became a potential vector of psychological warfare. The most brilliant aspect of the strategy was its inherent unpredictability. The aliens had approached human culture as something to be analyzed, cataloged, understood. They never realized that human culture was a living, breathing entity that changed precisely because it could not be pinned down. By the end of the first month, alien research teams were experiencing what could only be described as a collective nervous breakdown. Their communication networks, once models of efficiency, now resembled complex neural networks infected with a virus of creativity and chaos. "They studied our past," Michael said during a private moment with his team. "But they never understood our potential for reinvention." The psychological offensive had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. Each transmission, each cultural export, each seemingly random piece of human communication carried a simple, powerful message. "We are not what you think we are. We are something else entirely." The research facility stood in the middle of the New Mexico desert, a gleaming complex that looked more like a science fiction set than a serious scientific installation. Dr. Emily Carter moved through its corridors with a purpose that bordered on obsession, her mind constantly racing with possibilities that most scientists would have dismissed as impossible. Her team represented the pinnacle of human scientific collaboration. Researchers from every continent worked in perfect synchronization, their diverse backgrounds creating a synergy that defied traditional scientific boundaries. What they were developing was more than just a technological breakthrough. It was a fundamental reimagining of what technology could be. The alien transmission had provided more than just a communication challenge. It had offered a glimpse into technological principles that most human researchers would have overlooked. But Emily saw something different. Where others saw a complex communication network, she saw a blueprint for something revolutionary. Technology isn't about control, she often told her team. It's about conversation, about adaptation. The breakthrough came during what the team called the 72-hour sprint. Fueled by an impossible combination of scientific curiosity and pure human determination, they began to develop a nanoswarm technology that defied every known principle of engineering. Traditional nanotechnologies were rigid, designed with specific purposes in mind. Emily's approach was different. Her nanosystems were living networks, capable of learning, adapting, and completely reconfiguring themselves in milliseconds. Each nano-unit was both an individual entity and part of a larger collective intelligence. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura, a quantum computing expert, had developed a neural interface that allowed these nanosystems to process information at speeds that made quantum computing look primitive. A researcher from Johannesburg had created adaptive material sciences that allowed these nanosystems to change their fundamental physical properties on the fly. The first test was both terrifying and beautiful. In a secure testing chamber, a collection of nano-units was exposed to a series of increasingly complex challenges. Where traditional systems would have failed, these nanoswarms began to not just adapt, but to innovate. They could change their physical structure, create new communication protocols, and solve problems in ways that seemed to defy the basic laws of physics. A single nano-unit could become part of a computational network, then instantly transform into a structural support, then become a communication relay, all within fractions of a second. "We're not creating a technology," Emily explained during a classified briefing. "We're creating a living system that thinks like humanity, unpredictable, adaptive, constantly evolving." The quantum entangled weapon systems they developed were equally revolutionary. Traditional weapons were designed with specific targets in mind. These new systems could adapt their very fundamental nature based on the environment, the target, and the mission parameters. A missile could become a communication device. A defensive shield could transform into an offensive weapon. The line between technology and intelligence became blurred in ways that would have seemed like science fiction just months earlier. The most brilliant aspect of the technology was its fundamental philosophy. Unlike alien technological systems that were designed for stability and predictability, these human-developed systems thrived on uncertainty. They didn't just respond to challenges, they welcomed them. Government officials watched demonstration after demonstration with a mixture of awe and terror. These weren't just weapons or communication systems. They were living technological organisms that carried the very essence of human creativity. "Our greatest strength has always been our ability to improvise," Emily told her team during a rare moment of reflection. "We don't just solve problems. We reimagine what's possible." By the end of the first phase of testing, the research team had developed something that went far beyond traditional technological boundaries. They had created systems that could learn, adapt, and evolve faster than any known technological platform in the galaxy. The technological leap had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. Each nano-unit, each quantum-entangled system, carried a simple, powerful message. Human innovation knows no boundaries. The first wave of alien ships emerged from hyperspace with a precision that spoke of millennia of military preparation. Sleek, angular vessels that looked more like mathematical equations than traditional spacecraft, they approached Earth's solar system with an absolute certainty of victory. Admiral Rebecca Winters watched from the underground command center beneath the Rocky Mountains. Her team represented a global defense network that looked nothing like traditional military structures. No single command center. No rigid hierarchies. Instead, a fluid, adaptive network that could reconfigure itself faster than any opponent could comprehend. "They're following exactly the strategy we predicted," she said quietly, her voice calm despite the magnitude of the moment. The alien invasion force had been meticulously planned. Centuries of observation had led them to believe human defenses would be straightforward to overcome. They had studied Earth's military technologies, analyzed global communication networks, and calculated their victory with mathematical precision. What they didn't understand was that human preparation was nothing like they had anticipated. The first wave of ships entered the solar system's outer reaches, their advanced sensors scanning for defensive platforms. They found nothing. No massive space stations, no traditional defensive networks, just emptiness. But the emptiness was an illusion. Dr. Emily Carter's nanoswarm technologies had transformed the entire solar system into a single living defensive network. Seemingly innocuous satellites, communication relays, and space debris were now part of an adaptive defense system that could reconfigure itself instantaneously. The first alien strike came precisely as predicted by their mathematical models. A concentrated energy weapon designed to disable communication and defensive infrastructure. In any other civilization, it would have been devastating. For humans, it was an invitation. The energy weapon passed through what seemed like empty space, its targeting systems registering no resistance. Then, impossibly, the very fabric of space around the weapon began to change. Nanoswarms that had been dormant suddenly sprang to life, absorbing the energy, transforming it, redirecting it. The alien commanders watched in growing horror as their most advanced weapon was not just neutralized, but turned into something entirely different. Communication networks that should have been disabled instead became channels of pure chaos. Disinformation campaigns, cultural references, and psychological warfare flooded alien communication systems faster than they could process. What looked like random noise was actually a carefully constructed defense mechanism. Admiral Winters and her global team weren't just defending. They were playing a game the aliens didn't even understand existed. Each alien ship found itself fighting not against a traditional military, but against an adaptive, living system. Defensive platforms would materialize from what seemed like empty space. Communication relays would become weapon systems. The very laws of engagement were being rewritten in real time. "They studied our past," one of the alien commanders reported, his voice betraying a growing sense of panic. "But they are something else entirely." The invasion force, which had been designed to be an overwhelming show of force, began to break down. Ships that were supposed to work in perfect mathematical synchronization found themselves fighting against an opponent that didn't follow any known rules of engagement. Human defenses weren't just adaptive. They were alive. Nanoswarm technologies created defensive networks that could think, learn, and respond faster than any traditional military system. A damaged communication relay would instantly reconfigure itself. A disabled weapon system would transform into a defensive shield. By the time the alien commanders realized the true nature of their mistake, it was already too late. The invasion wasn't just being stopped. It was being systematically taken apart, analyzed, and used as a learning opportunity for humanity's defensive capabilities. "We're not just defending," Admiral Winters said to her team. "We're having a conversation with the universe about what's possible." As the last of the alien invasion ships found themselves caught in impossible defensive networks, one thing became crystal clear. Humanity was not just another species to be conquered. The invasion trap had been sprung, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Concordance had witnessed thousands of diplomatic hearings across millennia. Immense crystalline walls reflected light in patterns that had remained unchanged for centuries. Delegates from hundreds of civilizations sat in carefully arranged positions of hierarchy and influence. Catherine Martinez walked into this hallowed space with something no advanced civilization had ever encountered before: absolute certainty. Her team was a carefully curated network of humanity's most brilliant minds. Linguists who could deconstruct communication systems, historians who understood the intricate dance of interstellar politics, technological experts who could translate complex scientific evidence into compelling narrative. The hearing was supposed to be an inquiry into humanity's actions. Instead, it would become a fundamental re-examination of galactic power structures. "We are not here to defend ourselves," Catherine began, her voice carrying a calm that felt almost dangerous. "We are here to demonstrate a fundamental misunderstanding that has existed in galactic civilization for millennia." The captured alien communication logs were her first weapon. Holographic displays began to show intricate networks of manipulation, subtle interference, attempts that the Galactic Concordance had been executing across multiple civilizations for thousands of years. Communications that suggested not exploration, but controlled subjugation. Dr. Marcus Williams, the technological expert accompanying her, began to break down the communication networks with surgical precision. Each revelation was like a knife, slowly but systematically dismantling the carefully constructed narrative of galactic governance. The alien delegates watched in growing horror. Their communication systems, which they had believed were secure and unbreakable, were being deconstructed in real time. Every subtle manipulation, every hidden agenda was being brought into the light. "Your civilization has operated under the assumption that technological stability equals progress," Catherine explained. "We are here to demonstrate that true progress comes from adaptability, from the willingness to reimagine everything you believe you know." The evidence was overwhelming. Technological records showed how the Galactic Concordance had systematically limited the development of emerging civilizations. Communication networks revealed complex systems of control that had remained hidden for centuries. What made the presentation truly devastating was its tone. Catherine wasn't attacking. She was explaining. Each piece of evidence was presented with a clinical precision that left no room for argument, but also no room for hatred. The linguistic experts in her team had prepared for months. They understood that this wasn't just a diplomatic hearing. It was an opportunity to redefine the very concept of interstellar relationships. Diplomatic records were brought forward, centuries of interactions that showed a pattern of systematic interference. Economic documents revealed how emerging civilizations had been subtly prevented from developing advanced technologies. Communication networks demonstrated complex manipulation systems that had remained undetected for generations. "We are not asking for punishment," Catherine said, her voice carrying across the massive chamber. "We are asking for a fundamental reimagining of how civilizations interact." The most brilliant aspect of her strategy was its fundamental humanity. She wasn't seeking vengeance. She was offering an alternative, a way of engaging that was based on mutual growth rather than controlled development. Delegates from other civilizations, who had long been silent participants in this system, began to stir. The carefully maintained facade of galactic governance was crumbling, and something new was emerging. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the team's cultural expert, began to outline a new framework of interstellar cooperation. It wasn't about control. It was about conversation, about allowing each civilization the freedom to develop in its own unique way. As the hearing progressed, something remarkable happened. The rigid structures of the Galactic Concordance began to show cracks. Delegates who had been silent for centuries began to ask questions, to challenge long-held assumptions. "Humanity is not a threat to be controlled," Catherine said in her final statement. "We are an invitation to reimagine what's possible." The diplomatic checkmate was complete, not through violence, not through aggression, but through the most powerful weapon humanity had ever developed: the ability to see potential where others saw only threat. The galaxy would never be the same. The space station hung in the void, a marvel of collaborative design that would have been impossible just months earlier. Its structure defied traditional engineering. Sections that seemed to breathe and move, adaptive materials that could reconfigure themselves based on need. communication networks that pulsed with a living intelligence. Dr. Michael Rodriguez stood at the central observation deck, watching as delegations from hundreds of civilizations moved through the corridors. This wasn't just a diplomatic center. It was a living testament to a completely new way of understanding interstellar cooperation. The transformation had been swift, yet profound. The old galactic concordance had crumbled not through violence, but through the weight of its own obsolescence. Humanity had not conquered. They had invited. Not dominated, but demonstrated an entirely new approach to civilization. Catherine Martinez, now the primary human representative to the new Galactic Council, understood the delicate nature of their achievement. "We're not here to replace the old system," she would often say. "We're here to evolve it." The fundamental shift was in understanding. Previous galactic interactions had been based on control, on maintaining a rigid hierarchy of technological and cultural development. Humanity had introduced a radical concept: progress through diversity, strength through adaptability. Research centers began to spring up across the station. Each was a collaborative space where civilizations could share knowledge without fear of manipulation. The old system of controlled information had been replaced by open networks of mutual learning. Dr. Emily Carter's nano-adaptive technologies became the foundation of a new approach to technological development. Instead of standardized systems that remained unchanged for centuries, technologies now evolved. They learned. They adapted. Economic systems were completely reimagined. Rebecca Thompson had demonstrated that true economic strength came from flexibility, not rigid control. Trading networks became living systems that could respond to the unique needs of different civilizations. The cultural exchange programs were perhaps the most revolutionary development. Where previous interactions had been carefully controlled and limited, now they became true conversations. Art, music, philosophical concepts began to flow between civilizations in ways that defied previous understanding. "We're not just sharing information," Michael would explain to visiting delegations. "We're creating a living dialogue." The station itself was a metaphor for this new approach. Its architecture could change. Spaces could reconfigure themselves based on the needs of those using them. Communication networks were no longer fixed channels, but adaptive platforms that could transform themselves in real time. Younger members of different civilizations found themselves drawn to this new paradigm. They saw possibilities where their predecessors had seen only limitations. Cultural exchanges became more than just diplomatic exercises. They became opportunities for genuine understanding. Scientific research took on a completely new dimension. Collaborative projects emerged that would have been unthinkable under the old system. A researcher from a methane-based civilization might work alongside someone from a silicon-based world, their fundamental differences becoming a source of strength rather than division. Catherine understood that this was humanity's true contribution, not a technology, not a weapon, but a way of thinking. A recognition that the universe was more complex, more beautiful, more full of potential than any single civilization could comprehend. The first truly collaborative deep space exploration mission launched from the station, a team composed of members from 12 different civilizations. Their mission wasn't about conquest or resource extraction. It was pure exploration, pure curiosity. "We are not special," Catherine would say in her speeches. "We are simply the first to recognize that our greatest strength lies in our ability to be surprised, to be wrong, to learn." As the years passed, the station became more than a diplomatic center. It became a symbol of a new way of existing. Civilizations that had been enemies for millennia found themselves working together, solving problems that had seemed insurmountable. The galaxy was changing, not through force, not through dominance, but through a simple, powerful idea that diversity is not a weakness to be controlled, but a strength to be celebrated. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had invited it to reimagine itself, and the universe would never be the same.